Prince died alone. Or at least, that's what the world believed. The headlines screamed isolation. The reports documented years of withdrawal. But on April 21, 2016, when the news broke, a woman named Damaris Lewis opened her phone and felt something nobody else in the world could understand. She knew the truth. She had lived inside Prince's most private world. She had walked the halls of Paisley Park when they were empty and silent. She had heard the music nobody else would ever hear. And now, sitting with her secret, she faced an impossible choice. Stay silent and honor his obsession with privacy, or tell the world what they had shared. When she finally posted that photograph, the internet exploded. Because the woman in the image wasn't just beautiful. She was proof that Prince's final chapter had been written in a language only two people could read. Before we continue, if you want to discover more untold stories about Prince and other music legends, please subscribe to our channel. You won't want to miss what's coming next. The year was 2012. Prince was 54 years old, and by all accounts, he had mastered the art of invisibility. After decades of living under the microscope of fame, he had retreated into Paisley Park like a king withdrawing to his castle. The Purple Fortress in Chanhassen, Minnesota, had become more than a recording studio. It was a sanctuary, a place where Prince controlled every variable, every sound, every person who walked through the door. And he liked it that way. Damaris Lewis was 23 years old that year, and her life existed in a completely different universe. She had walked the runways of New York Fashion Week. Her face had appeared in Sports Illustrated. Victoria's Secret had put her in their catalog. She was beautiful in the way that stops traffic, the kind of beauty that fashion photographers spend their entire careers trying to capture. But more than that, she possessed something rare in the modeling world: substance. She could hold a conversation. She read books. She thought about things beyond the next photo shoot. When they met at a private industry event in New York, nobody thought much of it. Prince attended these gatherings occasionally, usually staying for 20 minutes before disappearing like smoke. He would shake a few hands, smile politely, and vanish. But that night, something shifted. Damaris was standing near the bar, talking with another model when Prince walked past. He stopped. Not dramatically, not obviously, but he stopped. And in that moment, two vastly different worlds began their collision course. What happened next unfolded so quietly that even people in the same room missed it. Prince approached her with the casual confidence of someone who had spent 50 years being Prince. They talked for maybe 10 minutes. Nothing profound, nothing earth-shattering, just conversation. But before he left, he did something he rarely did anymore. He gave her his private contact information. Not a publicist's number, not a manager's email, his personal line. And then he was gone. Damaris stood there holding a piece of paper with a phone number on it, and she had no idea that her life had just been divided into before and after. The relationship that developed between Prince and Damaris Lewis became one of the most carefully guarded secrets in entertainment history. And that wasn't an accident. Prince had spent decades watching his personal life get devoured by tabloids, dissected by fans, weaponized by critics. His marriage to Maddie Garcia had played out in public, including the devastating loss of their infant son. His relationship with Manuela Testolini had been scrutinized and analyzed until there was nothing private left. By 2012, Prince had learned a fundamental truth. If you want to protect something, you keep it invisible. So that's exactly what he did with Damaris. The first time she visited Paisley Park, she drove herself. No limousine, no driver, no entourage. Just her car pulling up to the compound like she was visiting a friend. Prince met her at a side entrance that most visitors never even knew existed. He led her through corridors that bypassed the main studios, away from the handful of staff members who might be working that day. and when they reached his private quarters, she stepped into a world that felt like it existed outside of time. The relationship developed in this bubble of secrecy. Damaris would fly to Minneapolis every few weeks, sometimes staying for a weekend, sometimes for several days. She learned to navigate Paisley Park's maze of hallways and recording rooms. She learned which doors led to public spaces and which ones opened into Prince's hidden sanctuaries. She learned that the man the world knew as Prince was both exactly who everyone thought he was and completely different. Inside Paisley Park, Prince was methodical about privacy to the point of obsession. Security cameras monitored every entrance. Staff members signed non-disclosure agreements that could end careers if violated. Visitors were rare, and those who did gain entry understood that what happened inside those walls stayed inside those walls. For Damaris, this meant existing in a strange kind of limbo. She could be completely herself with Prince in private. But the moment she left Paisley Park, their relationship ceased to exist in any public way. Prince played music for her that nobody else had heard. Songs from the vault, the legendary collection of unreleased material that he had been accumulating for decades. He would sit at the piano in his private studio and perform pieces that might never see commercial release, watching her reactions, gauging whether the music connected. Sometimes he would ask her opinion on a melody or a lyric, not because he needed validation, but because he valued her perspective. She wasn't a music industry professional trying to monetize his genius. She was just someone who appreciated what he created. But the relationship was more than music. They talked for hours about everything and nothing. Prince could be surprisingly normal when he wanted to be. He told jokes. He asked about her modeling career. He wanted to know about her family, her childhood, the things that had shaped her into the person sitting across from him. And slowly, carefully, he began to reveal pieces of himself that he had kept locked away from the world for years. The age difference between them, 34 years, could have been an insurmountable obstacle. But inside Paisley Park, age felt irrelevant. Prince had always existed outside conventional timelines anyway. He dressed like someone from another era. He spoke in a way that mixed street slang with spiritual philosophy. He had lived so many lifetimes worth of experiences that chronological age seemed like a meaningless measurement. And Damaris, despite being in her early 20s, possessed a maturity that bridged whatever gap might have existed. But maintaining that level of secrecy required constant vigilance, and over time, cracks began to appear. In 2013, rumors started circulating in certain circles that Prince was seeing someone. Nobody knew who. Nobody had photographs. But people who worked at Paisley Park noticed patterns. A woman's presence in spaces that were usually exclusively Prince's. Extra security protocols when certain visitors arrived. The subtle reorganization of Prince's schedule to accommodate blocks of private time. Prince responded by tightening security even further. He changed access codes. He limited staff presence during specific hours. He became even more selective about who he allowed into his inner circle. The fortress walls grew higher. But here's what made the situation unbearable for Damaris. She wasn't just hiding from the public. She was hiding from everyone. Her friends didn't know. Her family had only vague ideas about where she disappeared to for days at a time. She couldn't post photographs on social media. She couldn't mention Prince's name in conversation. She existed in his life only when they were alone together. And the rest of the time, she had to pretend that relationship didn't exist. By 2014, the strain was becoming evident. Damaris had her own career to manage, her own life to live. She was in her mid-20s, a time when most people are building public identities and social connections. But her relationship with Prince required the opposite. Constant erasure, endless discretion, perpetual invisibility. They had conversations about it. Difficult conversations where Prince tried to explain why secrecy was so essential to him, why exposure would destroy what they had built. And Damaris tried to make him understand that invisibility had its own kind of cost. The end came quietly, just like everything else in their relationship. There was no dramatic fight, no betrayal, no scandal. They simply reached a point where the math stopped working. Prince couldn't give her a public relationship. Damaris couldn't continue living in the shadows. So they made the painful decision that sometimes love isn't enough when the fundamental terms of existence are incompatible. They stopped seeing each other regularly. The visits to Paisley Park became less frequent, then stopped entirely. They remained in contact, but the intimacy that had defined their relationship gradually faded into something more like friendly distance. And because the relationship had been so private to begin with, its ending was equally invisible. No tabloid headlines, no tell-all interviews, just two people who had shared something profound, now navigating separate paths. Between 2014 and 2016, Prince's life continued in the complex, contradictory way it always had. He performed concerts. He released music. He maintained his obsessive control over Paisley Park and his artistic output. But people close to him noticed changes. He seemed tired in ways that went beyond physical exhaustion. The chronic pain that had plagued him for years was getting worse. He was taking medication, though he tried to hide how dependent he had become on it. The invincibility that had defined Prince for so long was cracking. On April 21, 2016, Prince died at Paisley Park. The official cause would later be determined as an accidental fentanyl overdose, the tragic conclusion to years of pain management that had spiraled into addiction. The news broke across the world within minutes. Social media erupted. News networks interrupted their programming. Fans gathered outside Paisley Park, leaving flowers and purple balloons and handwritten notes. The grief was massive, global, overwhelming. Damaris Lewis was in New York when she heard. She was scrolling through her phone when the news alert appeared, Prince dead at 57. For a moment, her brain couldn't process the words. They seemed impossible, like a sentence written in a foreign language. But as the reality settled in, she felt something crack open inside her chest. Because she knew things that nobody else knew. She had memories that nobody else had access to. She had lived inside a version of Prince's life that would die with him unless she chose to acknowledge it. For days, she stayed silent. She watched the tributes pour in from celebrities and politicians and fans. She read articles analyzing Prince's legacy, his impact on music and culture and fashion. She saw photographs of Paisley Park bathed in purple light. Thousands of people gathering to mourn a man they felt they knew intimately, even though most of them had never met him. And she sat with her secret, the weight of it growing heavier every hour. Then she made a decision. On April 28, 2016, exactly 1 week after Prince's death, Damaris posted a photograph on Instagram. It showed Prince in a candid moment, relaxed and smiling in a way that public images rarely captured. He looked human in the photograph, approachable, real. And the caption Damaris wrote was simple but devastating. "I'll miss you." The internet exploded. Within hours, the post had hundreds of thousands of likes and comments. People started digging into Damaris's background, trying to understand who she was and what her connection to Prince had been. Fashion websites ran articles. Who is Damaris Lewis? Entertainment blogs speculated, Prince's secret girlfriend? The photograph became a mystery that millions of people tried to solve. What made the revelation so shocking was how completely Prince had managed to hide the relationship. In an era of constant surveillance, when celebrities' every movement gets documented and analyzed, Prince had conducted a multi-year relationship that left almost no public trail. No paparazzi photographs. No leaked stories. No jealous exes giving interviews. Just silence. Until Damaris decided to break it. The photograph forced people to reconsider what they thought they knew about Prince's final years. The narrative had been isolation, withdrawal, a genius slowly disconnecting from the world. But the image Damaris shared suggested something different. It suggested that even as Prince retreated from public life, he had maintained intimate connections. That behind the fortress walls of Paisley Park, he had allowed certain people into spaces that were sacred and private. In the weeks and months after Prince's death, more details began to emerge. People who had worked at Paisley Park started sharing memories, carefully worded to avoid violating non-disclosure agreements, but revealing enough to confirm what many suspected. Prince had been seeing someone. The relationship had been serious. And Damaris Lewis had been more than just a casual acquaintance. She had been part of Prince's life during years when he was increasingly selective about who he allowed close to him. But here's what Damaris didn't share publicly, and what makes this story particularly poignant. The music. During their relationship, Prince had created songs inspired by her. Pieces that captured specific moments they had shared, inside jokes translated into melody, emotions too complex for words expressed through chord progressions and harmonies. These songs were in the vault now, part of the massive unreleased catalog that Prince had accumulated over decades. Some might be released eventually. Many would probably remain unheard forever. The relationship between Prince and Damaris Lewis raises profound questions about fame, privacy, and the cost of celebrity. Prince had spent his entire adult life being public property. His music belonged to everyone who heard it. His image had been reproduced millions of times. His personal life had been dissected and analyzed and turned into entertainment for mass consumption. So when he finally found something that felt genuinely private, he protected it with everything he had. But that protection came with consequences. Damaris spent years hiding a significant part of her life. She couldn't share her experiences with friends. She couldn't post photographs. She couldn't talk openly about someone who had become deeply important to her. The invisibility that allowed the relationship to exist also made it fundamentally unsustainable. And Prince died without ever publicly acknowledging what they had shared. There were no joint interviews, no official photographs, no public validation of what had existed between them. When Damaris posted that Instagram photo, she wasn't just sharing a memory. She was claiming space in a narrative that had been written without her. She was saying, quietly but firmly, "I was here. This was real. You didn't see it, but it mattered." The photograph now exists as a kind of historical artifact. It's proof that even in an age of total surveillance, it's still possible to maintain genuine privacy if you're willing to pay the price. It's evidence that Prince's final years, rather than being the isolated tragedy that some narratives suggested, contained moments of genuine connection and intimacy. And it's a reminder that the most important parts of people's lives often happen in spaces the public never sees. Today, Damaris Lewis continues her career in modeling and acting. She rarely speaks about Prince publicly. When asked, she offers respectful but minimal comments, honoring the privacy that defined their relationship even after his death. But that photograph remains on her Instagram, a small window into a world that existed behind purple walls and security gates and non-disclosure agreements. There's one more element to this story that deserves attention. In the months after Prince's death, as his estate was being settled and his unreleased music was being cataloged, someone discovered a collection of recordings made between 2012 and 2014. The songs had a different quality than most of Prince's vault material. They were more intimate, more vulnerable, less about performance and more about genuine emotional expression. Some of these tracks featured a woman's voice in the background. Not singing, just talking, laughing, responding to something Prince had said. Audio engineers who worked on cataloging the material recognized the voice from interviews Damaris had given about her modeling career. But the recordings weren't finished songs. They were more like audio snapshots, moments captured and preserved but never intended for public release. The estate decided to keep those recordings private. They weren't part of Prince's official musical legacy. They were personal in a way that transcended commercial value. So they remain in the vault, alongside thousands of other pieces that Prince created but never shared. They're ghosts of a relationship that existed mostly in shadows, evidence of a love that was real but invisible. And maybe that's appropriate. Maybe some things should remain private, even after death. Maybe the most valuable parts of Prince's life weren't the ones captured on album or film or in public performance. Maybe they were the quiet moments in Paisley Park's empty hallways, when a legend could just be a person, talking with someone who saw him rather than the icon. Damaris Lewis knows those moments existed. She lived inside them. And while the world only got a glimpse through that single Instagram photograph, she carries the full story with her. Not as a burden, but as a memory of when two people found each other across impossible distances and created something beautiful in the space between fame and anonymity. Something that didn't need to be public to be real. Something that mattered precisely because it stayed hidden until the very end.